afternoon and welcome to our webinar today. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Freddie Miller, Managing Director of GTSE, and John Tolhurst, who's the EMEA Sales Manager at Celigo. We're going to be hearing today from Freddie and his team and how they've modernised their e-commerce and operational stack, and how that has allowed them to scale at a rapid pace over the past year or so. So thanks very much, guys, for helping me out with this today. Just a couple of introductions. So my name is Rob Scambler. I'm the ERP Sales Director at Catalyst ERP. I've worked in the NetSuite and Celigo space now for 7 years or so, and delighted to be working with Catalyst. We've got Freddie. Freddie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Rob, thanks for the introduction. Hi, Freddie Miller, MD of GTSE, a background in finance and accounting, I guess, but recently ventured into the world of online e-commerce, and we've been doing that for 8 years now. Started very small, but you know, have shown some real positive growth over that period.
Thank you very much. And John, delighted to have you here.
Thanks ever so much, Rob. And yeah, delighted to be here. I'm John Tolhurst. I head up sales for Celigo, specifically in charge of the UK and I region. I've been with Celigo since the inception of our EMEA presence, and have worked with Celigo pretty much since their inception, care of my work with NetSuite way back in the day. So yeah, really delighted to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Rob.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Just a quick intro to Catalyst then. So we're a solution provider of NetSuite ERP, Oracle NetSuite, and also a newly formed platinum partner of Celigo. And we specialise in working with e-commerce and omni-channel companies who are looking to kind of integrate multiple sales channels. So when you're thinking about your Amazons, your Shopifys, Magentos, any kind of e-commerce channel, we're looking to integrate those into their ERP. Now, because Celigo is a solution that is agnostic, it's an agnostic iPaaS, which John will talk about in a second in a lot more detail. We have experience in integrating most, if not all, of those marketplaces into multiple ERPs. However, if you are searching for a partner that's a one-stop partner for a potential IT transformation project that you may be thinking about, obviously Catalyst ERP, being a NetSuite solution provider, will be able to help you assess NetSuite and Celigo as one potential solution to help with all your integration needs. We have certified NetSuite consultants in the team, and we also have level 4 Celigo consultants in the team, which is the top level of Celigo certification that you can get. So we have massive experience in helping companies integrate and automate their business processes. That's a very quick introduction to Catalyst. I'm just going to pass to John to introduce you to what Celigo is.
Okay, thanks, Rob. And I've got a very short space of time to tell you an awful lot, so I'll try and keep it succinct. Celigo is best described, we're an agnostic next generation iPaaS, or integration platform as a service. We could be described as low code or no code. That's our approach, and that's really what differentiates us. So when we talk about next generation, what we're saying is we can appeal to the traditional, very technical user of an iPaaS, but now we can also appeal to non-technical users who may be heading up a business unit. And what we're enabling them to do is really manage in real time their integration stack. So the idea of an iPaaS is that you're standardizing your approach to integration. So we offer the best of both worlds, a very technical approach if you want it, but a much more simplified approach to integrations. As Rob's already alluded, we've got deep technical experience, but we've also got a lot of background in terms of NetSuite, but also e-commerce, and that whole world. And that's given us, I suppose, a head start on the other iPaaS operators in this space. We are agnostic. What that means is that we're not limiting your choice of applications as your businesses grow and transform and reshape themselves as necessary. And that also means that you can consider any third-party logistic partner as well. We're never going to limit that choice. Celigo, as you can see on the slide, we've thrown up a little graphic there that really is just to illustrate that we have a horizontal focus right across any business's entire enterprise. So we're not particularly vertically focused on e-commerce or finances or HR. It doesn't really matter what the nature of the processes are that you're looking to integrate and automate. Celigo will be the common tool to standardize your approach to that integration. We are modular, very similar to NetSuite. If you're already familiar with NetSuite, our business model is very, very similar. We start you off on a tier and you add to that tier as you go, with bolt-ons, whether they be pre-built integrations, some of which we're going to hear about today. But we are headless. And you can see that we would target ourselves or describe ourselves as a mid-market targeted company. But you can see through some of the logos there that we will go up to global conglomerates and we won't limit their utilization. In terms of Celigo as a company, very well founded. We've been Celigo for 12, 13 years now. We've got over 6,000 individual logo customers, tens of thousands of users. As a company our size, we're over 700 employees. We've got a global footprint starting in West Coast of the US, right through EMEA, right round to Asia Pac and back again. Very well considered by the industry. G2 rank us as the highest rated iPaaS. But more importantly, you can see our Gartner and Salesforce ratings. Those are peer reviews, so paying customers. That's what they're saying about us. So just to summarize before I hand back, our differentiation, we're all things to everyone. We can appeal to technical and non-technical users, so we're easy to manage. We have an AI-driven automated alert system and bug fixing system that will help you live with Celigo. And we've also baked in an entire learning management platform so that you can learn how it works, so it becomes a useful tool set. A lot of information to take in 3 minutes, but hopefully some of it will stick. Rob, back to you.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. Onto the start of the show today, Freddie. Thanks again for joining us. Obviously, really excited to have you here and share your really interesting story and share with people how you've grown over the last sort of year or two since we've been working together. So let's start at the beginning. Tell us all about GTSE, what it is you sell, what market channels do you focus on, etc. And just introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks, Rob. I guess the business was one of those sorts of things that came about. I guess lots of people ask us, how on earth did you start selling cable ties, tapes, industrial products? And it was sort of one of those things where the stars just aligned. My background was finance and accounting. When we founded the business, both my parents were involved, and they'd been running their own businesses. And Tom, the other business partner, he had a background in digital marketing. So it felt sort of, when the concept came together, that we had the right people in the right space here. And I guess looking at the B2B industry at the time, it felt that it was, and still now to some degree, sort of 5 to 10 years behind the curve that we were seeing with domestic or direct to consumer or consumer-led businesses, where traditional business models, items were bought in bulk, sold sort of wholesale, lots of components to the chain, and obviously everyone's adding some markup on the way. Quite clunky, quite sort of disconnected. Generally, sort of service expectations and SLAs were very poor, and I guess people were expecting orders to be delivered within a week, and we came along and we sort of said, well, actually, we all had a bit of experience in retail and the digital space, and it was a case of, well, actually, we live in a world now where this all can be delivered next day. this can be made available. We will pick up the phone, we will respond to emails. And I think it was just a case of doing all the components of a well-run business, sort of connecting the dots. And of course, it started off very small. As I say, we were just the four of us. Everyone had day jobs. I was working in finance in London and Hong Kong, and everyone else was working kind of all over the shop. So it was a slow burner to start with, and things took time to build momentum. And I think there were times of disappointment, but as the kind of momentum built, the beauty of B2B is generally there's quite a lot of returning business and repeat customers. So tapping into that has been enormously critical for the business to succeed. I think we're all of the view that with B2B, if it's a one-time purchase only, then you'll struggle to kind of scale it and grow it and establish yourself within the market. So it was critical that we retained the customers we got, and that we delivered well with a high quality product and good service. Again, background of businesses that we've been involved with, all had lots of various issues with high headcount and big fixed costs. And I think that the ethos here was we wanted it to be lean and efficient, and where possible headcount light. We're not against people. It was just a case of let's do what we can internally, and outside of that, let's outsource whatever we can with technology or to third parties that are really sort of experts in field. Whereas we were better at selling things, others were better at helping us procure things or store things or fulfill it. We kind of found our part of the cycle, and then we outsourced where we could. And you say in your slide there that there's 12 of us now. Comparatively to revenue and the size of the business, I still think that's pretty lean, and that's the sort of the mantra that we want to go with going forward. And I think in the world of e-commerce now and in the marketplaces that we're on, data is just critical. We have enormous volumes of data going through the system now. NetSuite, upwards of 100,000, 120 plus thousand transactions a month, and when you've got that volume of transactions going through an infrastructure, an IT infrastructure, it needs to be robust, and inevitably that's why we came knocking on the door of Catalyst, because the existing stuff we had in place that simply just couldn't cope.
Yeah, and which is obviously what we're going to talk about in a second. So Freddie, when did you just give us when did you start the company? When was the company incorporated?
I think officially it was started in 2014. We started trading sort of more formally in 2015, and at that time it literally was sort of a side project for everyone. And I think at the time it was more of a hobby of interest that my parents had a retail business, Tom had a background in digital marketing, and I'd always had e-commerce type bits and pieces on the side through my financial career. So sort of 2015, 16, we were starting to gain momentum, but it was quite slow, given that we had very little time kind of committed to it. And then I returned from Hong Kong in 2017, so Q4 of that year. And I guess having at least one person running it full time, we could really sort of, throw our all at it. And get some great momentum with it. And similar timing, we also launched on Amazon. And back then, Amazon was a different beast, I guess. It would, the advertising wasn't available, and it was much more. I guess it was not the behemoth that it is now, even though it was a large marketplace for us to tap into.
Yeah. So obviously, before we start talking about NetSuite and Celigo, let's talk about what you had at the start of the company. So obviously, it's things like really kicking off for you 2016, 17, as you've just said. What kind of IT, we've got it on the screen there, but talk to us about the IT infrastructure that you did have in place in the formative years. And, at that time, that I'm assuming was working for you well, but then we're going to talk about the ignition to your growth in a second with COVID. But just talk to us about that IT infrastructure, and it worked well for you at the time, and it got us through a number of years, and I think it would be sort of ignorant for us not to appreciate that we did manage to kind of work with relatively fragmented and disparate systems. I think prior to Xero, we went as far back as Sage Line 50, which kind of people around will always kind of nod and smile that kind of when you look at the systems now and what's available, how we managed to get that talking to a Magento website still kind of baffles me. But in that sort of period pre NetSuite, we were using a mix of Xero, which was our accounting function, and again that served the purpose, but it really
it required a lot of manual entry, data entry, and equally it didn't talk to the systems we had, not through a fault of zero, just because the infrastructure as a whole, the sort of the ecosystem was not established by us. And so we had Xero sitting there, we had a Magento website, we had Amazon and to some extent eBay. We brought Limworks in purely as a sort of fulfillment conduit to get orders from our Magento website through to our 3PL in the UK at the time. I think that was using an FTP. Technically, I kind of got how that worked, but again, it was very clunky. And it was completely sort of stitched together in a sense that it worked, but more often than not, it would fall over. And you know, just before cut-off, we'd have 50 orders waiting to go out. We promised everyone next day delivery. The DPD truck's arriving, and none of the orders have gone through because one tiny piece of the puzzle's fallen over. So that aspect of it, and I guess at this sort of level, and we can touch on COVID in a minute, but when, you know, momentum was starting to build, and you know, in the earlier days, if you had a bit of a hiccup, it was not the end of the world. You could manually intervene, and you could put workarounds in place. When we were getting to sort of 18, 19, you know, a hiccup in fulfillment actually became a huge headache for the whole company, and it was sort of all hands on deck. You know, people emailing, people picking up the phone, dealing with customers, 3PLs. It was a disaster. And you know, it gave us sort of, it was a limiter. It was holding us back, I guess, from the growth, because inevitably when things go wrong, you know, that's the part that takes up 80% of the time, because, you know, it's not planned and you didn't expect it.
You're always looking back as well, aren't you, to ensure customer satisfaction, rather than as an MD and your CFO possibly looking, what's the next step? How are we going to grow the company? You know, rather than doing that strategic stuff, you're looking back going, have we done everything that we needed to do to satisfy the customers?
Exactly. You know, and whenever you're in a sort of a smallish business and, you know, a startup, or, you know, the big growth phase, it's always finding that balance between, you know, going after sales, because that's, you know, that's bringing the cash flow in, and, you know, that's paying the bills, and, you know, that's helping you to grow, and you know, the good boost morale wise. But at the same time, you can't let the infrastructure get left behind too far, because then you get a tipping point where, you know, your sales velocity outweighs what you can handle, and very quickly, you know, again, going back to sort of how we want to do it differently, 100% review scores wherever we go, that doesn't happen, or that doesn't, you know, maintain itself if you don't deliver on your promises, and fulfillment was a huge part of that. And, you know, having things in stock when they say they're in stock, and all those sorts of things, pockets of things talking to each other, with too many connectors that were reliant on human intervention, you know, only had a lifespan of so far. And stock, for example, was completely handled in spreadsheets. It was, you know, sort of offline, out of system. And again, you know, it worked. It got us through. Thankfully, moving on to NetSuite, we didn't find any issues, but it would have eventually fallen over at some point, and I didn't want to risk getting too far down the line that it fell over.
That poses a couple of really interesting questions, actually. And what I always come into when I'm talking to companies like yourself, Freddie, and John, I'm sure you have this as well, is we always hear, we're going to sort the front end out first. We want to get the sales moving. What balance do you think, you know, people listening today, or hopefully watching today, what balance do they need to put between front end and back end? You know, obviously they want to get the sales moving through your Magentos, your Shopifys, your big commerces, and your Amazons. But at what stage do you look at the back end, or do you think it's more prudent to go back end first and then front end, or do you do them jointly together? What's your view there?
Well, is there a trigger? I'm going to add to that, Rob. Was there a trigger, Freddie, that you thought, was it a combination of, look, this is, you know, a massive operational impact, so all hands to the pump, but also in the volatile world of e-com, your reputation is everything, and as you say, you're looking for 100% across the board. Was there a point at which you recognized the need for a more robust, more reliable way of scaling your operation?
I think it probably came to down to two or three sort of key aspects. I think one is the reputational piece, and I think we were getting to the point where, you know, we could have started, you know, losing some, not necessarily losing great customers, but there was a few instances that really stuck in my mind where something went wrong that we recovered from, but was stress and heartache for the team. Secondly was momentum. I think we were getting to a tipping point where the nuts and bolts in the existing setup were all rattling, and we were just about surviving, but it wouldn't have taken much for it to fall over. And I think a fail in the system, or it actually kind of disintegrating or falling over, would have had a big impact both to kind of recurring business and cash flow, I think, as well. We're on a really strong growth curve, and cash is king, as they always say. And if we can't fulfill for a week, or something goes wrong for a period of time, you run the risk of losing out on an opportunity, or just failing and falling off the momentum curve altogether. And I think thirdly, for me, and kind of amongst the team, we've got a really big sort of, I'd say we are an ambitious team given the size, and ultimately we've set our sights sort of a lot higher than where we are now, and fundamentally we wouldn't be able to achieve any of that without having the infrastructure, the back end in place. We migrated to a new website. We moved on to BigCommerce in 2021. And that kind of future-proofed to some extent the front end. We were now on a SaaS platform, not Magento, and that kind of helped sort of shore up the front. Then it was a case of, right, we've given ourselves the best opportunity to kind of sell and promote products. Now we need to give ourselves the best opportunity to fulfill and deliver on what we're trying to do here. And equally, without jumping ahead, the case for me was, speaking to other people, we don't want to, we don't want to go through ERP system. We don't want to go through big back-end system infrastructure, reorganizations every 3 years when we get to the next kind of step change. This was very much, we do it once and, that's it. We grow and evolve, we adapt. But certainly, I do not want to be ripping this out and starting from ground zero again, as we had done probably 2 or 3 times previously.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it? It's picking a system that's scalable with you. I mean, there's cheaper solutions on the market than a NetSuite and a Celigo, but like you say, you're going to hit a limit at some point, and you do not want to be doing this in 5 years' time when you've hit that really high level of growth, and it has to stop because your systems aren't good enough again. So yeah, I think it's a really important point. So obviously, COVID hit.
Yep.
A lot of companies, unfortunately, declined. But you, Freddie, went completely the other way and started blowing up. Volume started going through, and I think that's where your tipping point probably came. Yep. Who did you sort of seek advice from in terms of advice looking at ERP and integration platforms?
Yeah, as you said, COVID was the real tipping point for us, and again, there was a huge impact to businesses in varying degrees, from terrible to amazing, and thankfully. Through the types and nature of the products we were selling, consumables were in high demand. We were fortunate in some of the products we were selling. Disposable gloves hit our radar a couple of months before COVID hit, purely by chance, and that was just down to luck, really. Black and yellow tape that goes on the floor everywhere. And it was stuff that people were getting through in large quantities. So we very quickly had to adapt our business model to sort of respond to this. And like everyone else, no one knew how long it was going to last or what the impacts longer term would be. So we had to be very, very reactive. And that was the first trigger of, actually, we're struggling to be reactive here. We don't know where all our stock is. We don't know how quickly it's coming, where it's going. We don't know how quickly we can get it back into the market. So that was the first trigger. And then obviously, thankfully, the kind of sales volumes came through and the numbers increased. And it was probably sort of towards the end of 2020, I worked with a couple of business mentors, and I reached out to Tim Norton, who at the time was MD of Lights for Fun. I know a client of both of NetSuite, Catalyst, and Celigo, and he only had glowing stories about the sort of the trifecta of the three working together, and it became very apparent that we not on the same scale as they were at the time, but we had similar business models in the sense that we had a website. We had 3PLs in multiple countries, and we were on Amazon. We needed everything to talk to each other. And at that point, Tim sort of said, look, we've been through this process. We've done what you are wanting to avoid here. We've put ERP systems in, we've ripped them out and started again. we're very happy. We were very happy when we kind of implemented NetSuite and Celigo into the business. And I think, to be fair, that's when he made me aware of Celigo. I think Celigo hadn't even hit my radar at that point. So, and we can go on to talk about how we work with Celigo, but it was kind of an easy sell from Tim, and speaking to others within the industry, either referrals from you guys or other people I know that had e-commerce business. Everyone without fail said, we wish we'd put in a decent ERP system 3 to 5 years earlier. Everyone said we were behind the curve, or we weren't quick enough to respond to the issues that we were having. And I guess on the back of the COVID demand and the growth in the business, we had reserves, and rather than venture, explore different areas or different sectors of the market, the decision collectively was made, actually, we need to future-proof the business and invest in the infrastructure, because if this happens again, or ultimately to enable for us to sort of pursue our goals of really growing this business into a lot more than what it is even today, we would need something, an ERP system that runs right through the business, from procurement to sales and follow-up.
Brilliant. So let's talk about the solution then. So you spoke to lots of fun, obviously. We then met and had our first conversation, and you met with John and the Catalyst team.
Yeah.
So tell us about how you came to choose Celigo, NetSuite and Catalyst. So what was really important to you in first a partner, and secondly the software?
I think for us, when it came to NetSuite, we did look around some of the other big providers, who I shan't name, and they were of interest to us, and I think they could have all done what we were after. But for us, I guess, to be fair, it was probably Tim's endorsement of the setup, the fact that we're based in Manchester. You weren't a million miles away in sort of Leeds, Harrogate area. I know that's not the end of the world, but to me, I still like to meet people face to face. Yeah, a glowing review from him, and then subsequently having been introduced to you, Rob. I think it was actually your first week.
My first day.
Yeah. First day. So we met, and then obviously I think I met slightly more of the Catalyst team as well, and I think we all got on quite well, and there was a good relationship there. And I think for me, partly from speaking with Tim and others within the industry, it felt that actually whichever party we go with here, we're probably going to be dealing with them quite a lot now and going forward. Implementing an enormous or enterprise sort of ERP system is a huge exercise, and I'm sure we can go on to talk about that. But ultimately, beyond that, we've now been live since 1st of July last year, so coming up to a year. We talk to your team sort of at least every week, sometimes nearly every day, and that's not through anyone's fault or issues with the system. We're live now, and actually we've found that we can do so much more as a business with it. We're evolving, the platform's evolving, we're wanting to do more with it. And so, I think it came down to the fact that having, a reliable partner that we enjoyed working with, who were sort of well equipped to handle what we were looking to do, and with experience. I guess you've done it for Lights of Fun, you've done it for other companies as well. Whilst I don't mind kind of being a bit experimental with new software and things, I don't like being the guinea pig from day one. You're our first customer, because that inevitably, there's learning for you, there's learning for us, and that brings time and costs that everyone could do without when everyone's busy. So it felt a good fit for us, in terms of half replicating something he'd already done, and they had good feedback on it. So that was an easy win. And then when it came to Celigo, as I say, initially for me, it was sort of, oh wow, okay, we've got NetSuite, and then we've got a bulk listing on top, and what is this? And as we sort of started to uncover what Celigo did, John and I had a number of conversations as we were sort of scoping out what we needed the platform to do, and what resource we had and things like that. It quickly became apparent that actually this is a really good setup, because the Celigo aspect, well, from my personal experience, who is not, I'm familiar with technology, but I'm not a real techie person. The fact that, looking at a dashboard, the Celigo dashboard is almost a work of art. You've got all your tiles, and the traffic light system to me is, I guess, a selling point for Celigo, but from a usability point of view as well, you've got a dashboard with traffic lights, and whenever anything's wrong, obviously it goes red. And you know, even on the live demo, you can drill so far into the detail that you convert, a novice like me could potentially fix an issue with fulfillment, whereas with our existing setup, it was developers, it was multiple people's time on the team to try and work out what on earth had gone wrong, because it just wasn't obvious. Whereas this, it was a flashing light that says this has gone wrong and this is the exact issue, and pretty much this is what you need to do to fix it.
I remember the conversation with you, Freddie, where obviously we've gone through the pre-sales, we've given you what the investment's going to be for NetSuite, and then what the investment is for Celigo. And I do remember you, I guess,
probably.
I mean, it's not that expensive, is it, John Celigo? But
I think to a point earlier that someone made that no, we're not the cheapest on the market, but I was pointedly very quiet there. Because actually, Freddie, you talked a lot in detail about what I introduced us as, that we're all things to everyone. You, by definition of yourself, are not a technical person. A bit like me, I'm a business user, so are you, but Celigo's usable. But interesting, what you also talked about was that, I describe myself as, I lead the sales motion, but this wasn't a sale. I wasn't selling to you. Really, what we were doing was more proving and reinforcing what you'd already researched and learned when you were talking to Lights of Fun and the like. And it was our job then to convert that into, okay, what's life going to be like with Celigo? And in turn, that's proved itself in reality. As you say, there's heavy automation around actually living with the application. And I think that's what people are buying into. That's what you bought into. You're getting into a headless system that's never going to limit your growth. It's going to support your aspirations wherever they take you because of the agnostic nature. So yeah, it was great to hear. So
absolutely,
I've not said much.
I think it basically, Celigo basically becomes your IT department or your integration department, doesn't it? So for the cost of what Celigo is, it's cheaper than 2, 3, 4 people in an IT department, depending on how big your company is, and it's scalable. So if Celigo is not going to leave, it's not going to hand in its notice, is it? Whereas an IT person can, and then you've got to train somebody up and employ somebody else. It's a constant investment, but the next question, Freddie, is what's your growth plans? It's allowing you to see a return on investment fairly quickly, right?
Definitely, and I think just to go back one step, in terms of a validation point as well, we spoke to other NetSuite users who sort of predated or had not made it onto Celigo and had built out their own functions to handle what Celigo does for us. And it was a couple of developers almost full-time internally, plus other infrastructure needed to make it all work. And when they migrated to Celigo, for me, I didn't know anything else, and Celigo, that was the only option basically, and it's worked out well for them. They'd sort of predated Celigo, then moved on to Celigo, and for them it was a huge cost saving. Not trying to sell Celigo, but for me, I initially saw it as quite a big cost, but then speaking to others, it was a more cost-effective solution, and now live with it, it's a no-brainer really. And the team all rave about how much or how easy it is to use and kind of check in on status and stuff. But I know I can see on the slide there that you mentioned that the various sort of plugins and things we've got, and in terms of growth, I guess that's the beauty of Celigo, NetSuite, and I probably touched on it, and sort of our growth journey. And we are where we are today, but we've got enormous plans to grow organically through our own website and other websites, and the acquisition pipeline is sort of growing week by week. And I'm now having regular conversations with not just Catalyst and NetSuite, but also Celigo to say, guys, we've got an opportunity here to launch another website. We now need an additional BigCommerce website. Can you please cost out, the ability for us to plug in another website, or we're bringing another 3PL online. What's the Celigo element of that? Obviously, there's Catalyst time to integrate everything, but the ability for us to effectively just plug new things in, easier said than done, but that's effectively what we're looking to do here. And that's what we need to enable seamless growth. If every step of the growth journey is sort of fragmented and blocked by, issues here and there, then it will be, a very slow process, and we won't achieve the targets and goals we've set. It needs to be seamless, it needs to be automated, and it needs to be intuitive for the team. We don't want to grow our team in a linear style to our top line and our profit. We need to be able to grow at a faster rate than our headcount does, and I believe that the system should allow us to do that if we do our part right as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So just looking at time, so we're a little bit over, but that's absolutely fine. So let's conclude, Freddie. So I'm hoping we've got people on this webinar today who are possibly thinking about modernising their tech stack, but maybe, obviously times are tough at the moment, and they're looking at that investment and what return on investment they're gonna get. What advice would you give? What's the main advice that you would give to someone who's on that tipping point, if you like, of do we invest, do we not? Do we hold back for 6 months? Do we get through this difficult time? What kind of advice would you give there?
I guess for us, the big thing that we partly did well, and I would definitely recommend to others to do better, is involving the right key stakeholders early on in the process. I think this was I guess I led the initiative to move on to the ERP system, but there's times that I wish I brought the finance team in earlier to better understand our requirements, or scoping out what life under NetSuite might look like. Partly probably because we didn't know what it was going to look like, but I do think getting everyone's input from day one and speaking to others who are looking to migrate and move on to a new ERP system. I think it can be often led by finance, or it can be led by one specific department. And I think actually getting everyone's buy-in or everyone's view early on, without overburdening yourself with too many opinions, can help shape the decision and help you and throw up more kind of triggers earlier than you might think. Equally, I don't think there's ever a good time to sort of uproot your existing systems and put something new in. Obviously, if you've got projects going on, then you want to time it so you're not jeopardizing sales and the front end of the business, but certainly stakeholders was a big thing for us. And I'm not saying this at all for any specific reason, but I wouldn't be led purely by cost. As we've all said, this is not the cheapest setup. If you want a really cheap setup, we could go back to Xero and Limworks, and we could have a much more bottom line cost, dollar cost. But I feel that in 2, 3, 4 years time, you'll be at the same stage again where you're having to go through this scoping exercise and basically start from scratch again. And I don't think it's worth anyone's blood, sweat and tears to want to do this more than once.
Yeah, 100%. And what do what are the 3 main benefits really as a concluding line that NetSuite and obviously Celigo have given you as a business?
It's broad efficiency, and that is part of our one of our key defining parts of the points as a business, is that in order to grow and be a lean and efficient model, we need to be automating anything we can, and the combination of the two has allowed us to automate lots of processes that were previously manual. So that's a big win. Future proofing for growth with the data piece. I think as we our sales grow, the volume of data is just enormous, and we now badge ourselves as sort of a data and intelligence-led business. We could not do that without NetSuite or Celigo. That is now ingrained in what we do, and in order to develop the business further, that is now part of our core. And I think beyond that, it's the scalability piece. Without scalability, it's a no-brainer. We would get to the point that I've just talked about, where we're now capping out the back end again. Right, let's start from scratch. This is a one-time only implementation, and look at the NetSuite or Oracle website of types of clients that are already on the system or the platform. To my mind, we can scale infinitely with the platform. Time will tell.
Yeah. And and obviously with Celigo as well, you can put as many endpoints as you want onto that platform. It's as John said at the start, it's headless. and you can dominate the world, Freddie.
We'll do our best.
That's the plan, right? Right, that's brilliant, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I think Becky's online. Becky, do we have any questions that have come in at all from
you do? You've had two that have come in. So the first one that has come across is: are there any prerequisites or technical requirements that need to be met before integrating NetSuite and Celigo for an e-commerce company?
My limited knowledge would say no. There's not. As Freddie's alluded to already, there's no technical prerequisites needed really.
Let me answer that, Rob, in so much as really it needs to exist. There has to be, NetSuite needs to exist, and whatever commerce platform or whatever 3PL you're thinking of, they have to exist, or at least you have to have conceptualized, what basic processes do you want to automate? And then we can start to model, what your footprint's going to look like in terms of the project. And then the Catalyst guys can start modeling effort around that. So we can look at the license set, and then we can look at the effort. Then we can start looking at timelines, and then it becomes a realistic proposition. So either have live systems, or if they're not live, know what you want them to do from a business process. But to your point, Rob, yeah, not really technical. These are more sort of business process questions.
Yeah. Thanks, John. And you said there was a second question, Becky?
Yep. So this one is: are there any limitations or potential challenges to consider when integrating the NetSuite and Celigo?
No, I mean, the beauty of Celigo and NetSuite is that, although Celigo is at its heart an agnostic platform, so therefore from a technical perspective, it doesn't care necessarily what it's trying to integrate and automate. But because we've got deep domain expertise in the NetSuite realm, it means that we can expose every facet of NetSuite down to custom fields and custom save searches. So it really means that ultimately, if you were to use Celigo as a pure iPaaS and not even employ any of the pre-built stuff we've got around e-commerce, it's almost limitless. It really then just comes down to your imagination and time and budget as well, or resource in-house.
I think Freddie's good, well positioned to answer that as well. I mean, what challenge did you come across? Any challenges integrating NetSuite and Celigo?
I think you inevitably find that with a bespoke integration that there are nuances that need handling, but I don't think we ever came across a scenario where we got a blanket no from Catalyst, this can't be done. There's an element of being resourceful both on the kind of customer client side and from Catalyst side, and generally with the help of Celigo. I don't believe there was anything that was sort of not possible. There were different ways of attacking things or approaching things, but certainly I don't think anything wasn't possible. And I guess from a sort of technical perspective or a capacity, we're sort of an example where we went on to a version of NetSuite and have since had to, due to transaction volumes, I guess a good problem to have, we exceeded the band we were on. And yes, there's a cost associated with it, but we've simply gone up to the next tier and the capacity's there. And I guess, it's no longer an issue for us. How easy that is for other platforms, I'm not sure, but for us, it was relatively straightforward.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay.
And we've just had one more quick question come in, Rob, which I think will be prime time for you as well. So can we receive a recording after, or is there going to be another session?
So we will send the recording out of this session. We are going to be hosting another webinar with Celigo, which is going to be a slightly more technical webinar. And it's going to be with a chap called Adele, who's from Celigo. and we're going to be talking about how the integrations work and what can be integrated into what, and etc. So we're hopefully going to be securing that date within the next couple of weeks. And when we do, everyone on this webinar will be invited. So hopefully everyone will be able to join us for that. So that just probably leaves me to say thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, John, and thank you, Freddie. Really always love hearing your story, Freddie. I think it's brilliant. Love working with you. It's always really exciting to see where you're going to take over next. And if anyone does want to talk about Celigo and hopefully NetSuite as well, feel free to drop me an email or give me a call, and the team and I will be absolutely delighted to speak to you. So once again, thanks guys, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the week, month, and year. All right, take care.